In a deep and mysterious village called Chernosko, dark times have come. For many years, the villagers lived in peace, setting up their homes, working in the fields, and spending their nights in warm conversations around the fire. But one day, with the appearance of a mysterious wanderer named Mordecai, everything changed. Mordecai was a dark and mysterious man, always dressed in dark clothes, with eyes that seemed to hold many secrets. The villagers began to notice strange events after his appearance. Cattle began to disappear. Eerie sounds came from the forest at night, and children began to tell terrible dreams about black figures chasing them. Mordecai's first victim was the old sorcerer Leonard, who had always turned to magic to help the village. His body was found in his own hut, stained with blood, with eyes full of terror. The villagers began to suspect Mordecai of the atrocity, but no one could find evidence against him. Every day it became more and more frightening. People disappeared one by one, their bodies found in abandoned houses and in dark corners of the forest. Nightmares haunted everyone who dared to go to bed. Soon the villagers began to close their houses at night and hide their children, to protect them from the mysterious evil. The worst night came when the wind drove dark clouds over the village and the moon hid behind the clouds. First, a bonfire was lit in the main square, and out of the flames appeared Mordecai in dark robes. He raised his hand, and the dead bodies of the villagers began to rise from the ground, turning into shimmering ghosts. "These are your fears, your dark thoughts," Mordecai spoke, his voice like the creaking of an icy wind. "I have become the embodiment of your nightmares, and now I will rule this village forever." The villagers tried to resist, but the darkness was too strong. They realized that Mordecai was an extraordinarily powerful mage, feeding on the fears and despair of the people. The village of Chernosko became a place of darkness and terror, imprisoned in his power. The village of Chernosko has been shrouded in darkness and fear ever since. It is said that if a traveler accidentally gets lost and enters this area, he will hear Mordecai's whispers and see the shimmering ghosts of the inhabitants who died by his hand. Sometimes at night, when the wind howls in the forest, as if someone is trying to reach out to the world of the living, one can see the ghostly silhouette of Mordecai floating mysteriously in the darkness. This is the story of the village of Chernosko, where evil and darkness have taken over everyone, leaving only ghostly traces of the past in the memory. Over time, many generations changed, and the story of the village of Chernosko became a legend told around the campfire on dark nights. Many thought the story was just a scary tale for entertainment, but some claimed to have seen the ghostly shadows themselves and heard Mordecai's whispers as they traveled through the surrounding lands. One dark night, a stranger named Arthur appeared in the village. He was a brave and determined young man who was determined to find out the truthfulness of the legend of Chernosko. He spent a long time studying old records, talking to the locals, and decided to travel to the place where the village was located. The journey to Chernosko was long and difficult, full of dangers and trials. But Arthur, against all odds, kept going forward. That evening when he reached the village, the sky was covered with dark clouds and the wind was howling much harder than usual. Arthur stood in the main square where the fire had once blazed, and suddenly felt an atmosphere of fear and gloom thicken around him. Suddenly a figure in dark robes, resembling Mordecai, emerged from the gloom. Arthur was not afraid. He was ready to fight this dark creature. He drew his sword and began to gather his resolve and courage. The figure drew closer, and Arthur realized that it was not just a ghost, but something much more powerful. Mordecai looked at Arthur with cold eyes and spoke in a grim and cold voice. "You came here to end me, but do you know that I have already become a part of this land? I live in every fear, in every shadow." Arthur did not give in to threats and blackmail. He drew his sword before him and said confidently, "I have come to free this village from your darkness. Fear cannot rule over you forever. The people of this land deserve a bright future." Mordecai began to raise his hand, summoning his power. But at that moment the wind rumbled harder and the sky lit up with a bright light. Arthur sensed that he was not alone. The shadows of his ancestors stood behind him. fighting fear and evil. The power of this collective will begin to weaken Mordecai. With difficulty and in a terrible battle, Arthur, relying on the strength of his ancestors, managed to destroy the darkness that enveloped the village. Mordecai vanished and the ghosts of the villagers found peace. With the first rays of dawn, the sky over Chernobyl cleared and the dark clouds dissipated. From that moment on, the village began to rebuild. The inhabitants returned, and the houses were once again filled with warmth and light. The legend of Mordecai became part of their history, a reminder that courage and determination can defeat even the worst evil.